Hello, welcome to the Good Morning Wake Up Show. David Cohen with you. We've got two guests today, Tony Esteves from Calgary, Cathy Bell from her home office in Alliston. Tony is an entrepreneur, a circus performer, an international keynote speaker who's passionate about connecting with people. His varied and unique international experiences provide the foundation for his company, EyeOnTheBall.ca. And Tony teaches about creativity and communication. We're going to talk about communication today, and maybe a little bit on creativity in an engaging, memorable way. And as a keynote speaker and workshop facilitator, Tony shares inspiring stories about how unexpected connections can transform one's life and career. These face-to-face conversations are what inspired the creation of the Talk to More People project. This aims to prove the value of these conversations by meeting a new person every day for a full year. A graduate of the Second City Improvisation Program in Toronto, Canada, Tony integrates dynamic teaching techniques using improv, juggling, and mini ping pong, I remember that, into his communication and creativity workshops. Having lived and worked and traveled in 40 countries, including managing logistics for the U.S. military in Uzbekistan, teaching in Japan, corporate sales in Ukraine, Tony brings his international anecdotes to the learning arena. Now Tony teaches people to turn up the volume on their own voices to reach their full potential at conferences and events around the world. Welcome. Nice to see you again, man.
Nice to see you, David. Nice to see you.
Yeah. So we talked, prior to our interview today, and, we have to change the way we communicate. You and I were talking just prior to recording this, that, both our work has changed. I mean, you do workshops and training, and you're in the Cirque du Soleil, right? And
not Cirque du Soleil.
Okay.
It's a little different than Cirque du Soleil.
Okay.
My circus is called Cirque de la Nuit. It's a Calgary-based circus, quite a bit smaller than Cirque du Soleil.
Okay. So, you're doing that. So like our work is just like caved in. Our worlds, in terms of meeting each other to communicate, has caved in. What do we need to be mindful of when we're communicating now with one another? I think compassion needs to come probably at the forefront as opposed to getting our point across.
Yeah, do you mean on a Zoom call like this, or in person when we come across people we don't even know?
I mean, right now during the pandemic, that we need to maybe be a bit more compassionate than maybe normally where we wouldn't exercise that so much.
Yeah, certainly. I think that compassion is most welcome and needed at this time, and in particular, learning to be a more effective listener, I think, is something that everybody, no matter where they are on their journey of communication, can improve upon their listening skills. And now is a really great opportunity to practice that, whether it be with a family member in your house who you're quarantined with, or on a meeting or conference call over Zoom or some other technology. Practicing your listening skills can show compassion for other people. And if that's new to you, you might really learn quite a few things from listening a little bit more.
So what are some good listening techniques, and and then what do we want to be listening for? Because we want to maybe go a little deeper, because some people might be maybe suffering a little bit right now, or in pain or fear. So what are some good listening skills that we can implement, and what do we want to be listening for? Because my concern is that if this goes on too long, there's going to be, more incidents of depression, and who knows where that might lead. It might not be a pretty end.
Mm-hmm. So it really depends on the context of the situation when you ask, what are you listening for? And so I'll speak to an instance of speaking to someone who I already know and listening there. And as far as listening goes, there's many different ways that you can improve your listening abilities. As a number of techniques and a number of different types of listening. One of them is called active listening, where you're kind of acknowledging the things that the person is saying. You're engaging. You're not just sort of like off in zombie land, but rather you're making eye contact and really acknowledging them. There's also compassionate listening. There's another listening technique called empathetic listening, and any of these, if you were to practice them, would show that the person that you are speaking with, it would show that person that you really are there with them. And if you boil down the main thing about any of these listening techniques that have different, different technical elements to them, the bottom line really is about mindfulness. It's about being present and learning how you can bring yourself to a place of being present with the person or people who you're speaking with, and learning how to turn off all the chatter or all of the devices, the distractions, so that you can be there one-on-one or with the entire group of people who you're there with. So to dissect it, I believe it's a lot more of a mindfulness piece than even necessarily a training on listening in particular.
When this started to unfold 3.5 weeks ago, almost 4 weeks really, where were you at in terms of your listening and the chatter, the chatter in the head, the chatter online? Where were you at in terms of your consumption of that versus your being more mindful? And has your mindfulness level started to come back online and increase more now?
I'd say how much I pay attention to media and social media is largely unchanged, but there was a spike as everything kicked off around the sort of middle of March. So I believe in something I call a low media diet, and I intentionally don't spend a great deal of time consuming social media or mainstream media. I stay informed by the news sources that I trust the most, but I do my very best to spend less than 30 minutes a day consuming online content. Now, as you know, David, I am a content creator. I put out loads of little things, thoughts of the day, tips on how to meet new people. And I get a great deal of satisfaction out of creating those starting points for discussions for people, but I truthfully don't get a great deal of satisfaction out of being online, moderating those discussions. I like to start the conversation and then kind of step out of it, which might be a little bit selfish, but that selfishness has served me very well, because when I had a spike in how much news I was consuming right at the beginning of all of this for where I am in Canada, I very clearly noticed how my mood and my wellness declined dramatically. And I was just paying very detailed attention to the numbers and getting really, really fearful about an elder parent who I have, who would be in a vulnerable category in my own condition. I mean, I have asthma myself, so I've got a respiratory issue, and just being exposed to that much media forced me to really look at and consume all the worst case scenarios. And that's far more than I needed. All I needed was to be informed about how I need to social distance based on where we are now. But I ended up going so much deeper because it's such a new phenomenon and curiosity, right? And so maybe that's a long way to answer your question, but during that spike of consumption of media, like in the range of 3 hours a day or more, I noticed a dramatic negative spike in my wellness. And my partner also noticed this, and she brought it to my attention. And then I got back to my norm of this low media diet, and everything has been much more positive since then.
Yeah, and you look a little thinner too. So it's the low media diet. Maybe you'll come up with a book. So even though we can't, be in person one-on-one going for coffee like you and I have done in the past, we can still have conversations. We can still have close connections. I find that, the thing that people talk about is what's going on today. But how can we start to have really more meaningful conversations with people in our life. And where's good? What are some good conversation starters, Tony?
From my experience, the way that I have been able to have some more meaningful conversations, despite one of my pillars of what I'm all about as a facilitator and as a business person, is encouraging people literally to meet people face to face who they've never met before and to explore those possibilities. And of course, I can't advise that at this time. Mm-hmm. And what I have discovered is that the meaningful conversations are coming from talking about what might be possible in the future. And so this touches on a little bit of what you mentioned in reading my bio there, David, about the creative piece. So in the world of creativity, there is a great deal of focus put on the how might I type of questions, as opposed to can I do this? And it's yes or no. It's better to ask questions that allow for many, many possibilities. And then you go through a process of deciding on what those possibilities are that you want to explore. And so that sort of creative mindset has been really helpful for me and enjoyable for me. And in fact, I think going to be leading me in a slightly different direction with my business, because now I'm starting to have a lot of conversations with people about what their future might be. And did you know that you have the opportunity at this time, while you might be laid off or have no clients or there's no income coming in, did you know that you have the opportunity to explore the possibilities in that change? So working in the circus, of course, there are a number of different performing artists who I collaborate with, one of whom I had a meeting with last week, and he said that when the plug got pulled on all of our upcoming events, although it was a financial strain, he said, truthfully, when this happened, I actually felt a sense of relief. And I know that many people who work for different organizations and also small business owners at this time are feeling great stress on the financial side. And many of them are also feeling a great deal of relief because they might have been doing something not out of passion, not out of service, but out of momentum. And so I'm starting to engage in a lot more discussions about what's a really bright possible future that you could explore to then be of even more service to the people you connect with in the world. And I think that's led to a number of meaningful conversations.
Yeah, I like that. And I think that's a really important question to ask, not only of ourselves, but as a group, as a collective. You know, what can we create? What can we, what possibilities can we bring forth right now? And I think those are really meaningful conversations. And it also gets your mind off of the current situation that we're in, which is bringing up fear and concern, and we're kind of wondering, like, we're 4 weeks into it, what's really going on, so I think it's good to sort of a nice way to sort of get your mind off of the current situation and into sort of possibility thinking and thinking about a vision that we or one can create. What's your take on that? The importance now maybe of having those meaningful conversations about what is it that you want to create, what's in your heart waiting to be birthed and to come forth.
My take on that is that I think many people don't know that they have a choice to even ask those questions. Many people just, all they can think about is, holy cow, I just got laid off and I don't have a paycheck and I got bills to pay. Unfortunately, our government has arranged that you don't have to pay all the bills right now, which is helpful. But of course, very understandable, just to be shaken up like this amount of change is phenomenally stressful for many, many people. And that's totally understandable. And in that stress response, people can be very closed to new ideas. People can be very guarded because they're in a state of fear. So you can't just say, okay, I've got a solution for you. We're going to talk about a bright future and expect everybody to jump on board with enthusiasm, because they may not be in a place to consider new options because of the fear that they're in, which is justified. And I'm suggesting that it's a wonderful opportunity for us as small business owners and as Canadians to take the time to ask those questions. Because, let's say that there are, I don't know, pick a number, 10 million small business owners in Canada. And that's probably a big number. But anyways, if just 1% of those people took the time to ask these questions at this time, and then went back into the workforce, let's say 2-3 months from now, pursuing a goal or pursuing a product or a service that they to offer that they were more passionate about. That's what's 1% of a million. Was that 10,000? Is that my math? That'd be 10,000 businesses doing more meaningful work for them. And truthfully, that is absolutely going to end up improving the world. So I think we just have a huge opportunity here that isn't being spoken about too much because of the fear, which is justified, and because of the uncertainty, which is justified. And I'm not sure if I answered your question, but I think I just see opportunity.
Yeah. You seem pretty aligned with your purpose still through all of this, through all the loss and the change. What is your purpose? What's Tony all about?
Ooh, you weren't kidding. We're going to get into deep questions here, David. My goodness. Yeah, my purpose. I'm here to entertain and inspire people to make change in their lives, and I do that through a combination of facilitation, coaching, and performance art. And the way that I do it, I guess the how that I do it, is constantly evolving as I evolve to be a healthier person, and as I evolve to learn, new techniques and new ways to bring change to people. So, and to look even further back, I would say that I'm here to have fun helping people figure their stuff out.
Right. Okay. I like that. Where do you want to? What do you see for your future? What are you envisioning there?
Well, this has been one of the great things about that negative experience with the spike in the media that had me all in fear myself, is that it forced me to take a look at what I'm up to and to consider, am I doing what I really want to do? Am I doing my most meaningful work? And by the way, I have a book to recommend on that subject that just came out by a friend of mine named Tom Moran. It's called Your Best Work. And this book would really help you look at if you're doing the right work that you're most passionate about and most able to be of service with. And in looking at that, I concluded that I'm on the right path, but I don't quite feel I'm exactly where I can be the best that I can be. And as you know, David, I have a book coming out that teaches people literally how to meet people. It's called Talk to More People. And that's a piece of what I see in my future, and the work that'll come with that, and the facilitation and the coaching that will come with that. Be wonderful. And I'm very excited, in light of what's going on right now, that some of my upcoming work and some of my upcoming being as a person is to help people navigate their own personal and professional change. And I have done some of that in the past, but now I feel a much greater sense of purpose of it at this time in my life. Quite a different time than when I used to see you all the time in Toronto 8 years ago. Mm-hmm. So that's what I think's in the future for me. Get a book out, have some fun with that, and then also do my best with my current skill set to help people navigate their own change.
I've seen some authors as we wrap up who are now reading their book online to educate and inspire others. So just with your communication background, something for you to consider. Once you write your book, just reading it a piece a day, to inspire others.
Oh yeah, there'll be no shortage of hearing me through different media once this sucker is out and released.
I look forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for this today. I really appreciate it. I like what I heard is, the media fast or the media diet, and that we need to be having more meaningful conversations. Yeah, we could talk about the situation, or we could, and let that paralyze us, or we could reframe our focus and start to envision what we want individually and collectively and in communities.
Absolutely. And speaking of community, David, thank you so much for having me on. I know that you have been of great service to your community, and by having these calls, for example, is another way that you're being of service to your community. And I just want to thank you from the western part of Canada, from Calgary, Canada, for all the good work that you've done over the many years since we met, maybe back in 2012.
Yeah, at the National Job Fair.
The National Job Fair, yes. And I just greatly appreciate all the good work that you do as well. So thank you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you today. If you want to stay with, please. If you got to go, feed the dog or something, or write your book, then you're free to go. I'm going to go over to my next guest, though. And again, Tony, a pleasure. Nice seeing you again, man.
Lovely. Thank you.
Keep well. Thanks. All right. Our next guest is Cathy Bell. And Cathy has been working with healing energy medicine in her own practice. She does group forms, transformational facilitation, reflexology. She's got over 8 certifications. Her passion, energy, and humor, unique viewpoint, and peaceful nature will have you feeling very secure in her presence. More than believing, Cathy feels there's a deeper place of knowing in each of us, and she has the ability to take you to this place. A journey into remembering who you truly are is Cathy's gift of healing service. She teaches us that everything we are looking for is right inside of us. Peace truly begins within, and with simple, powerful tools, we can learn to access our own personal power. From this place, we realize the interconnectedness of all of life, which takes you to Cathy's next passion, a message of oneness with her music. One part of Cathy's musical passion is her song called We Are One, celebrating the paradigm shift of separation to unity. You will continue to find Cathy walking out her message in everything she does, from healing work in her practice to group work in self-empowerment, to her music, her own journey of self-reflection and inquiry, and her commitment to being a student of life, which she feels is most important work of all. Cathy, welcome. So, they got snow in Calgary, eh? There's no.
Did they really?
Yeah, there's no snow in it. You got quite a. Yeah, go show us.
Did you get?
Not bad. It's melting.
Wow.
Oh, he's on mute.
It was completely white this morning. It's just melted a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Wow.
What a vast country we live in.
Oh wow, beautiful country.
Saskatchewan just got hit with like 51 centimeters this month. So
you know what, Tony, I want to say, when I went out west, I wanted to move there, and that was 30 years ago. I never got there yet.
Right, well, still here waiting for you.
I know. Okay, cool. I love it out there. I love the mountains.
It really is. There's something magical about it. So
yeah.
Cathy, we're winging it, you and I have no question.
Oh yeah, let's wing it.
But Tony was a nice segue actually into our conversation. People are still in fear. I know I have my moments where I might read something. I'm not doing my media diet so well. I fall off the wagon, and I go down a rabbit hole, and I read something that kind of puts me into a tailspin. A lot of people still are in fear. There's people that they don't even know what's going on really. They're following maybe the media.
Yeah.
What's this really? What do you think this is a call?
What's
the call right now? Like, what do we need to be sort of realizing about our fear?
It's interesting, because even listening to you guys before and what Tony had said, there's this beckoning call when we're going along a certain way, and all of a sudden we get stopped in our tracks. And that you become aware of the default button, I would say, in my own personal life, the default button that I kept pressing, and that I wasn't quite aware that I wasn't expressing my full potential. So I think there's possibilities there that we don't know. Remember where we talk about landmark a lot, where the possibilities we don't know. There's unknown places within us. That is the place we're going to be embarking on within ourselves and there for each other. So I love listening. I just want to say thank you, listening to you and Tony. And I almost want to just say, brother speaks for me. Like, we're all speaking the same thing, maybe in a little bit different words or language, but we're all speaking of the same place within us. That place, that rising up inside, that place. Like, we're going to work. Are we really happy with our work? Are we really happy with our life? Are we just paying the bills? how are we living our life? How are we living our life? So it is not saying that everybody is at the same awareness that we are to have this conversation, but it might spark or ignite something in them to go, yeah, you know what? This is having me reflect very deeply inside of myself, what's working and what's not working. And that takes some, you know, some awareness, some mindfulness, like Tony said, and some courage and strength. There's the word I was looking for. Thank you. You read my mind.
Because we might not like what we see.
You know, I could ask you the question. I mean, there's some places that I'm not really keen on going into the closets within myself to clear them out, because some of them hold some pain. Some of them hold some pain there. I was writing just the other day that there's whatever you're not dealing with or whatever you're running from in your life is catching you right now, unless you're numbing yourself. Unless you're, I mean, I know the LCBO is still open here and there's all lineups. We just went out to get a few groceries before. There's lineups to get in there. So most people are numbing themselves, no judgment, just observation. They're numbing themselves. They're not even knowing how to go inward to access anything, because usually as you do the dive inside, there's some pain there. There's some armor there. There's some blocks there that sometimes we have to sort of meet them. We can't, you know, the only way around it is through it, right? That's some of the stuff my teachers or the help that I've gotten have said there's only the one way. And my shaman teacher says, we're going directly to where you don't want to go. That's the place where we need to go. And you're like,
is that the heart? Is that the heart? Is it our wounded inner child? Where is that place?
I think there's layers to it. I could only speak from my own experience, and then with some of the clients I've dealt with over the years in groups, that really what's incredible, and I'm going to write a book, and it's going to be that really we are one, because there's only probably three variations of the same. I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, I'm not worthy, or maybe another one, I'm never going to be good enough, whatever. But we all have those same variations of the same. Might be a different life, might be different experiences, but there's something in there. There's some conditioning, some programming, maybe even, who knows, maybe we came in with this. I mean, we could have so many conversations about this that could be limitless, right? I don't know if I answered your question, but that there's inner child work. Sometimes you hit those pains of those pains inside of us. We all have a story, and we all have experiences where we felt we've been conditioned out of who we really are. We come innocent. I was just talking about innocence the other day. Like, where's our innocence? Where, if we took off all of our identity, if we took off all the identity and all the coats we wear when we go into certain businesses and we do all this, what if we could be ourselves everywhere? But we're conditioned, like, you're not good enough. If you don't make this type of money, you don't do this, you don't do this, you're not good enough. So then we start to feel less than. And then we don't show up the same, because maybe we're different and we have a different expression than the most sheeple or most people, and we feel shame. Like, so it all gets, you know what I'm saying? It becomes, so I think it's, from my experience, we can't get through this with our thought. This has to be direct experience. So I invite people to go in, and even myself, because this is all about going in deeply and reflecting through your breath and going inside and asking the truest question, which is, who am I really? And sometimes it's difficult to get honest with ourselves. And sometimes there's shame, and sometimes there's pain, and sometimes there's all these resistances, you know, that old saying, resist, persist. There's stuff there that needs to be met. So
Tony, I'm going to just throw to you for a sec. Unmute, if you could unmute yourself. Can we feel safe in having these kinds of deeper conversations with one another? And how can we begin to have these sort of conversations with one another where we're really tapping into sort of, you know, that pain point? I remember being, you know, coaching a client, and I tapped into a pain point, and the room went silent.
Wow.
And, you know, in a negotiation, the first one to talk loses, right? So do we need to have those kinds of conversations? And how can we begin to sort of have those deeper conversations where we can be vulnerable, Tony, and yet still feel safe?
Great question, David. I would say that, first of all, ask great questions. And second of all, understand that not everybody is going to be ready to be vulnerable. Not everybody is ready to be coached. Not everybody is ready to be open and go to those depths just on a whim. So it takes some practice as a coach, as a facilitator, to be able to navigate that. I'd like to recommend another book called The Coaching Habit by Michael Bungay Stainer. Mm-hmm. Seven incredible questions if you're any kind of coach or facilitator that really helped me quite a bit, actually. So I'd say, number one, ask the right questions, listen more than you speak, and also recognize that not everybody is going to be ready to go to those depths with you.
So maybe that's what we need more of right now too, Cathy, like, you know, to really not only ask ourselves, but to ask each other, to get real. Because like when you get real, what's there, Cathy? Like, what's there? When you take down the mask and the armor. And
you know, it's funny. I like what you're right. Sorry to interrupt. I like what Tony just said, because it's true. Not everybody is ready to go there. And I guess there's not even pride in this. When I create a circle or a group or even a sacred space for people to come in, it's not my agenda. I'm with them to support them. So there's an unconditional part. So when I know I'm the sacredness of even, gosh, I went off the question. Just remind me of the question, because I went up into my head for a second.
What's behind the armor?
Well, you know, it's simply this. If you can actually just, you know, for a moment, even just a little practice or a little exercise right now, if we just closed our eyes and we actually went inside of us and just observed our thoughts for a minute, and then you start to observe your thoughts, but you then start to go inward. Well, who's the one observing these? Like, so the thoughts are in front of me. So, no, really, I think what you can find very quickly, and what I've experienced in my own self, in my own practice, and my own experiential stuff, is that I am what I'm looking for. I'm what I'm looking for. There's nothing on the outside that's coming to give me anything. And I can tell you, most people that come to me, or even myself, in a short exercise of self-inquiry, I can come to peace very quickly. Like, there's peace there. Underneath it all, there is an isness. I would call it a being, an isness, a being that is present, even though there's fluctuations happening constantly. So there could be a war. There could be what's happening right now in the pandemic. There is, and I have found some of the greatest peace inside of me, even though this is happening. So there's a place within each of us. There's a place within each of us that is stillness. And it's the being part, we've been programmed to do, and it's great. Creation and all of our stuff is amazing. There's this stillness. There's this peace. There's this isn't.
Haven't we also been programmed to hide our shame? You know, when I gave thought to this maybe last week or a couple of weeks ago. You know, having read Brene Brown, a couple of her books, and she talks a lot about shame. And, you know, we started to hide it, mask it by lying, and then we lie to ourselves, and it just keeps perpetuating. And I think kind of what drives the human condition or actions is to avoid shame and guilt and looking back. What's your take on that?
So the interesting thing is, when you say that, I guess the human nature. Well, no, but I love that you've asked that, because it's a great question. It's a great observation. It's a great to see that and to hear, like, the vulnerability that Brene Brown's talking about. It's kind of coming full circle back, because there is a human nature in us. When we come here, there's a duality in us. There's an ego, and there's a being, an isness part of us. So there's almost like a battle going on inside of us, until we become more aware of this other part that's there, that's even more powerful than that could be the thought that goes through us, the limited mind. There's a space within us.
Why are we afraid to go there then? Why are we numbing out? And why are we afraid to go there? What is that isness?
For myself,
No, for generally.
Well, I would say generally, could only speak from my own experience, is that there's pain there. There's shame and pain, and there's stuff that needs to be, it's almost like your body has memory of everything, right? It's in there. Your body speaks. When your body says no, you gotta, I mean, really, what's happening right now is Mother Earth's saying no. She's put us all, like, remember the whole kind of joke, she put us all in our room. We need to really rethink about what are we doing here? I mean, there's many, conspiracy theories about what's happening and all sorts of stuff, but this, I don't think I have the answer except through my own experience. And what I've seen people is that there's very easy access, and it doesn't mean that people are always ready. And it doesn't mean it's one swooping step and I've arrived there. It's circular. So there's layers. It's like an onion. There's awareness, and then there's new awareness. And like Landmark said, there's places that we know, and then there's places that we don't know what we don't know. I don't believe it ever ends. Like in my lifetime, I'm in my 50s, late 50s now. It's getting juicier. Like it's getting, there's more awareness. There's more understanding happen, where I felt like I had to search for it all the time, or we had to search and search and search. And yet there's quicker access.
So why are we afraid to be real and vulnerable?
Are you asking both of us? I would say for myself, it's got to do with a lot of conditioning, a lot of shame, a lot of not being accepted in the whole. I feel that's, well, how does a person that stands out? You even look at nature itself. You look at a little fawn that's being, if they're going to race to grab a deer to eat, they're going to go for the most vulnerable one, right? So when you're showing that sensitivity, I even think of when I was in primary school, I used to get picked on because I stood out. I mean, not because I was any better or any worse. I just stood out. We stand out, our sensitivities, and everybody makes, there's certain things rating from young. I've seen it with children. You make fun of the one that stands out. You make fun of the one that had the red hair. So it's hard it takes sometimes a lifetime to stand for what you feel you are, or to express it. It takes a lot of, like you said, courage. It takes courage. It's not, and it can sometimes be challenging.
All right, Tony.
I think if you were to boil that question down, David, and I completely agree. I completely agree with Cathy's analogy about it being an onion. Learning more awareness about yourself, and then going deeper, and then continuing to go around as you get older. So that awareness piece is a huge element of it, of why we're afraid to be vulnerable. But I think if you were really to boil it down, it's that many people don't love themselves. And I had to learn to love myself. And that didn't actually happen until I was in my 40s. Truthfully, like to really at a very, very deep level, truly love myself. And as long as you've known me, David, I've been a very positive, high energy, nice guy. Mm-hmm. But truthfully, it's only been in the last 5 years that I've really come to truly love and embrace the person who I am. Like really look inside, really take a look at where I'm challenged and where I thrive, and accept all of it unconditionally. And I had to go do a lot of work to achieve that. Many people never achieve that in their entire lifetime. And I think that the default in our society is that when starting out, we don't look in those places. It hurts, numb it. Again, as Cathy was saying, it gets in the way. Don't look at it, just fight through, be strong, but don't be too emotional or whatever. So that for me is the real reason most people are afraid to be vulnerable. Is they just haven't yet learned how to truly love themselves.
So what prompted that journey for you, Tony, and what did you discover and uncover about yourself?
So I've had a few bouts of depression along the way, and in 2017 I was coming off of a bout of depression. 2016 actually, I was coming off a bout of depression right around the time I started that project of meeting people. And that was really helpful, but that year was still a roller coaster. All the way into 2017, I still wasn't settled. I've had a lot of transition, a lot of movement in my life. And I had the opportunity to attend something called the Hoffman process, which is a 1 week, I see Cathy nodding her head. It's a 1 week intensive program where you really work through your patterns of behavior. And I was privileged enough to attend that, and it worked. And ultimately what they teach you there is how to love yourself. And so I got to do that process in 2017, and my life has profoundly changed for the better since then. So yeah, that's what really came to me when you were asking, but why is it that people don't allow themselves to be vulnerable? I'd say they just haven't learned or had the opportunity to learn how to truly love themselves.
So are there steps that one can take that we can, to begin to love ourselves for who we are, the good, the bad, the ugly?
I'll hand it back to Cathy.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, even that Hoffman, I have heard about that. I haven't done that myself. There's many ways. I mean, I've done something called satsang for many years, and it's, there's so much that's so simple, and yet it doesn't, like, we've been so convinced it can't be that simple, but some of it is really simple. It's as simple as, like, it's work, because there's a part of us, there's a default, there's a narrative, there's a commentator inside of us that had taken a role for a long time, has in a lot of our lives, in our heads. And it's, I guess for me, the most helpful, I would have to say it's many things. I've done a lot of shamanic, I've done a lot of ceremony, I've done a lot of, each step of the way kind of gave me a new awareness. The Landmark Forum, the satsang, it's the willingness to show up with yourself. And that's difficult because we're so programmed that it's on the outside coming to us. We've been programmed. I mean, religiously, I think I was brought up Catholic. Religiously, I was a sinner and I was not worthy. That is what God branded into me. I was not worthy and I'm a sinner. So okay. And I was always a rebel. I was always a warrior, right from a child. I was always that child that my mother was like, oh my God, Cathy, Cathy, And yet at the end, when my mother was passing, who was there? Cathy was there, not the rest of my siblings. God love them. I'm not saying that but they were there, but I was there to, so it takes work. It takes a lot of self-reflection, a lot of looking, a lot of humility, a lot of going, okay, I'm not right. And admitting, oh my God, that ho'oponopono, please forgive me. I'm sorry.
You're the second person today that I had that talked about ho'oponopono. So
it is. Please forgive me.
Would you want to just share what that is with those?
Well, it's an exercise which is very simple, and there's feelings that come up. Please, I love you. Please forgive me. Or it goes, how does it go? I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. So it's a process, and we can even do it with ourselves, right? We always think we get these tools and then we go out for others, but this is something to be given. Like Tony was talking about, self-love. This is about giving ourselves a break and an acceptance of the light and the shadow parts of us, because we all have them. And, David, you and I in our friendship, sometimes we beat up against trigger, and all of us trigger each other sometimes. And if you actually take the moment, you can actually get through amazing stuff very quickly, because you realize maybe my little inner child or maybe that part of me that was humiliated.
So our wounds, our wounds come from, where do our wounds come from? What are they about?
Well, it's interesting. I would say, again, the three directives, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, it's not fitting in. Parenting. I mean, I think of what I've lived through, what we've all lived through. I mean, we all have a story. We do. Every one of us has a story. And listen, our parents, you think of the generation and how we've changed, even in the generation so quickly as our parents to us now. And if we have kids to our children, like it's, if you work it, there's like gratifying results that happen that you'll change the future with the children that you're involved with or you influence. I know I didn't have children myself, but I know I've influenced my God kids. I know I've gave sacred space for children to know that, you know what, you rock and you roll and you're awesome. And yet have a place, that life's going to kick you. Life kicks, and it kicks hard. And some of the lessons aren't easy. Some of them are very difficult.
I just want to share the screen for a sec. Share Joe Vitale for those. Joe Vitale and Dr. Lou, or Hugh Lin, really brought this Ho'oponopono prayer to and course into the sort of the mainstream. There's books on it, and you might really think Joe Vitale. Joe Vitale, where do I know that name? But he was
The Secret.
yeah, the Teachers of the Secret. There's Dr. Hugh Lynn, and this prayer, when said, clears all kinds of negative energy. The study was they use this in prisons, and the rate of repeat offending totally drops. So just it's really, and then the rate of violence dropped in the prisons just by using the Ho'oponopono prayer. So I think at the heart of it, so we talked about love and self-love, and it does take work. Sometimes it takes, like what Tony went through with depression, I went through last year with a foot injury, and I realized also I had to do inner child work, and talk to my inner child, and my inner child is I think I've shared on previous calls, is when I was 10, I lost my dad, and so I made up a story about that, and that story was about, well, I don't trust God, I don't trust the universe, I don't trust the good things will happen. Why me? Why this? And that I brought into every element of my life moving forward, probably unconsciously, but having done a deeper dive, I realized that kind of was maybe impeding my success, and impeding my joy and my self-love. And so I had to really talk to that voice. And Cathy, you and I have done some work together, and that I call it Krusty the Clown. Alfred, my favorite, he's this guy that sits on the couch and he's very negative, right? And we're laughing, but it's true. And,
No, it's true.
Well, who are you to do that? Why don't you just sit down and watch some sports with me, right?
Yeah.
Dude, no, I got to get going, right? And so that little voice, that matters away, prevents us from really doing the things we need to do. And maybe we need to kind of pull. I don't know. This is very simple. I'm simplifying things, and it's not that simple. But we need to sort of work with that inner voice and that inner child, and to release it and say it's okay to come out. And in that inner child is innocence and love, and joy. Tony.
I think it's full circle back to through investigating within. I mean, that one of our greatest jobs needs to be inner reflection, and most of what we see in the world is outer reflection and blaming, and all of us. And listen, I'm not. We've gone through stages of awareness, so I've done things that I've learned from and how I've been. And I think when you say that you had, I've suffered. I mean, I've had great loss over the last 4 years. My mother and friends and stuff. Life can kick you to another level, and it all's going along great, and you're going wee, and then boom.
Yeah.
Just what's happening right now. It's calling for a different layer.
May I add to that?
Sure.
Cathy, the reason I'm holding up a pen, David, is it struck me a few minutes ago when you asked the question, well, how can we tackle this this self-doubt or this shame or these negative feelings? And it's about reflection. It's about picking up a pen and doing some writing every day. And it doesn't have to be for an hour. It doesn't have to even be for 15 minutes. And maybe in your case, it might only be on weekdays. But since I have been writing almost every day for more than 5 years, boy, I learned a lot about myself. And whatever your journaling process, it could be a gratitude process. It could be just a free writing process. I have a structured process that I follow. But if a person who is looking to learn more about why their mind and emotions work the way they do, that's not the way that they would like them to be working, then pen and paper is, I'd say, the best starter kit that we all have access to start looking inside, and to create a routine about that. Right? There's real importance to creating like a morning ritual, if you can, that can have profound benefits in your own self-awareness.
Yeah. And I think we need to maybe take this time to reflect and create and heal.
I also think, you know, we're built on a foundation now in the last 20 years. Think about it. I mean, you and I were privy to playing kick the can when we were kids and climbing trees and all that. Well, in the last 20 years, we have devices that have created instant gratification, instant this, instant that. We got to have it now, got to have this, got to have that. Well, whoa. You know, and then you've got children that are being brought up, which I've witnessed, that are now don't know how to self-soothe, don't know anything about. It's instant on the outside. It's got to be always entertained. You know, I think it's so important to find the balance between the inner and the outer, and seeing, I don't know, it helps to see the truth and a deeper truth, although we can't put that wisdom on children's shoulders, but we can at least invite them into, you know, into different influences.
Well, Tony, you work with groups, and you know, there's an element of play in what you teach. How important is it for adults to, you know, to bring back the element of play and wonder and imagination?
It's very important. It's really important. So many people, again, it comes down to people thinking they don't necessarily have permission to be playful as an adult, and that they've just never really thought about it because life got busy, career took over, or family and kids took over, and they just never got a chance to consider, do I have options about the way that I work or lead my life? And could I, people just haven't even thought of, could I be a little bit more playful in my social interactions, whether it comes to your work colleagues or your family or even strangers out in the street. And so I think that a lot of people just never thought about it. But when I'm leading a session, most of my sessions are play-based sessions where we're using some form of play or some sort of skill is being taught that's very play-based as the element that leads the discussion on whatever it is, whether it's focus, resiliency, you know, time management, or group dynamics. And the results have been very, very positive. That people love to have an excuse to play at work. And I've been fortunate to get feedback that people are able to take that beyond the one day, oh, it felt good session, or if we do multiple sessions together, but actually able to implement it into their the way they do the work. Not everybody, of course, but a number of people have been able to. And yeah, it's just, if it was important when we were kids, because that's how our brains developed, how could it stop being important just because we're older? You know?
I think somewhere along the line, you know, that innocence and that little inner child
True.
got just, you know,
Squelched.
You know, yeah. You know, my late father, God bless him, I love him, but you know, I was told a few times as a kid, you're to be seen and not heard. And look what I do for a living. I'd go bankrupt. Wait a minute. COVID crisis hit. I might be. But Cathy, last words on
Who
that.
do you think, or you, the old saying, who do you think you are?
Yeah.
You know.
So last little piece of advice for those watching.
Can I read something? Can I read something? Because I picked a card.
You've got about 2 minutes left, okay?
Okay, 2 minutes. Ready? It's the Wisdom Keeper, and it says, it talks about the native.
Who's the book by?
It's the White Eagle.
Yeah.
And I went to pick a medicine card, but it says, we native people keep the knowledge and purpose of things, such as what certain kinds of rocks can be used or the significance of particular events. We can see beyond the environment and predict what is to come. My first teaching for you is trust your inner knowing. Awaken your perceptions. You have far more awareness than you realize. Don't you know that you are connected with all life? Rocks, plants, clouds, creatures, all can speak to you and share their knowledge with you. You are connected with Creator and with Mother Earth. Much knowledge and wisdom has remained hidden or ignored because people have become too fascinated with material existence. Life's treasures are in the simple things that are free and in the ancient wisdom still there to be discovered. That's how I want it, because you know what? I'm a tree hugger. I connect to Mother Earth. I do a lot of work with Mother Earth at times, and Father Sky and the universe. It's simply, it's work. Calling back to the simplicity. It's calling back to simply being. So like even Tony was saying, the playfulness. I'm fascinated by your work, Tony. I mean, oftentimes David and I laugh our heads off. It's coming back to the innocence and simplicity and realizing there's way more going on here than we know.
Yeah.
In a good way. in a fantastic possibility way.
See?
Magic, magic, magic.
Yeah. Wow, I thank you all for this today. I think
Can
we
I-
need
can
to
I
have
say
a
some-
little heart-to-heart discussion.
Can I
on
say
what's
something, Dave?
going on. Yeah.
I love you, and I am so grateful for you, and the work you do is so powerful and inspiring, and I've never met anybody that works so hard and has such a community feel as you do, and such an open-hearted giving. So I want to say thank you for that. You inspire me.
Very well said, Cathy. Here, I second that.
Thanks.
And nice to meet you too, Tony.
Yeah.
Lovely to meet you. I'm going to be connecting with you after the call. It's lovely to hear about what you do as well.
Well, and you too. I'm fascinated by your work. We love the playfulness, right, David?
Yes, we do. Cathy and I do voices, and
Oh God.
we're the not ready for primetime players.
No, not yet, but
Perfect.
we have some fun, that's for sure.
You know, we're definitely equal opportunity offenders on our own time, but with love, like it's with love, with humor.
It's
right?
with love.
Yeah, you really.
Thank you.
Well, I thank you both, Tony Esteves from his home in Calgary. We're all from our home in wherever.
And me from a thriving metropolis of Alliston.
Alliston, and Cathy Bell and Alliston, my name is true, as the song goes. Oh, that's Allison. And both. And thank you for watching. We're going to scale back a little bit. We're going to do 2 shows a week, and but you can count on us to do the Good Morning Wake Up Show to help you cope and make sense of what the heck is going on. And also, kind of a nice announcement is I'm going to be launching a show for small business called Edged in a couple of weeks, and that stands for Entrepreneurs Doing Great Every Day. So we'll be doing 2 shows, and I'm using this opportunity to build these shows, and when things, not that they're going to get back to normal, but if we see some normalcy, I'm hoping to take it to air. So that's the goal. So have a really good week, everybody. And Cathy, again, and Tony, a pleasure. Thank you so much. Have a great day.